She saved the wounded biker wolf at midnight, not knowing her touch would break a forbidden oath. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. Emily Hart was out for a late-night drive, the kind of drive she always took to clear her head after another long day at the garage. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the winding road she was familiar with, but tonight felt different. A thick fog had rolled in, clinging to the ground like an invisible blanket. The hum of her car's engine was the only sound in the stillness, and the headlights barely cut through the dense mist. Her thoughts were far away, her mind replaying the mundane events of the day, when she saw it. A figure sprawled out in the road. At first, she thought it was a trick of the fog, some shadow playing games with her eyes. But as she slowed down, she saw him clearly. A man, or maybe more than a man. He was on the ground, covered in blood, his motorcycle lying in a crumpled heap beside him. Emily's heart raced as she pulled the car over, her instincts kicking in before she even knew what was happening. She rushed to him, kneeling beside his still body, the faint scent of gasoline and something sharper, metallic, filling the air. His face was bruised, his eyes closed, but there was no mistaking the beast-like presence around him. His skin, though human, seemed to shimmer in the moonlight, a strange aura surrounding him. The tattered leather jacket he wore was torn open, revealing a tattoo on his chest, a wolf's head, its eyes glowing faintly, as if alive. She didn't know why she felt this strange pull, this need to help him. Maybe it was his vulnerability, or maybe it was something deeper, something inexplicable. She checked his pulse, then quickly got to work, using her scarf to staunch the bleeding on. His leg. She winced when she saw the deep gash running from his thigh to his knee, the blood pouring out faster than she could manage. "Stay with me," she whispered, more to herself than to him. As she carefully cleaned the wound, she noticed something strange. His skin, though warm, seemed to flicker like a fire caught in the wind. It wasn't just the moonlight playing tricks. It was as if his very body was changing. She looked up, startled, but his eyes had opened, glowing yellow in the dark. The moment their gazes locked, she froze, her breath catching in her throat. "You shouldn't have touched me," he rasped, his voice rough and low. Emily's heart skipped. She didn't know what to say, her mind scrambling for words, but she couldn't tear her eyes away from his. "I couldn't leave you out here," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. He gritted his teeth, clearly in pain, but his gaze softened, though there was something wild in it. "You've broken the oath, human. You've touched the wolf. And now, you'll pay the price." Emily's mind raced. Oath? Price? She didn't understand what he meant, but there was something in his words that sent a chill down her spine. Before she could ask him what he meant, he groaned and pushed himself up, gripping her arm with surprising strength. "You're in danger now," he said, his voice filled with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "And it's not just from me." Emily's mind raced as she tried to process what the man in front of her had just said. Danger? Price? She wasn't sure if she was more confused or frightened. She had only tried to help, but his words were heavy with meaning she didn't understand. She tried to pull her arm free, but his grip tightened just enough to stop her, though not painfully. His eyes burned into hers, an unnatural glow lighting up the darkness. "What do you mean, pay the price?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You saved me," he said, his voice low and filled with something between gratitude and warning. "But by doing so, you've broken a sacred oath. And now, there's no going back." Emily swallowed hard, the weight of his words settling in her stomach like a cold stone. What was he talking about? She had no idea who he was or what this oath meant. She only knew that she had acted on instinct, driven by the simple desire to help someone in need. She wasn't prepared for the cryptic consequences that seemed to follow. The man, Liam, he had told her his name earlier, looked at her with something approaching disbelief. He seemed to be struggling internally, as though torn between a fierce need to protect her and a pull to something darker, more primal. "I didn't mean to break anything," Emily stammered. "I just couldn't leave you there." Liam let out a slow, pained breath, his gaze softening for a moment before it hardened again. You don't understand. In my world, we're bound by ancient rules. Rules that should have never been broken. The touch of a human, a mere mortal, it's not something we ever allow. He paused, his voice becoming more strained. And now, you've brought me closer to the darkness within myself. Emily frowned, trying to make sense of his words. The darkness he spoke of made her uneasy, but the fear in his eyes seemed real enough. I don't want any part of this, Liam. I just want to help you get better. I didn't know I was breaking anything. It's not your fault, he said, his voice softer now, but still laced with an edge. But you've done more than just help me. You've unleashed something I can't control. Emily felt a shiver crawl down her spine, but she held his gaze. She wasn't going to back away now. Not when someone needed her. What is it that you can't control? She asked, her voice steady, though her heart was pounding. Liam looked away, his jaw clenched. The wolf, he muttered. I'm not just a man. I'm cursed. He shook his head, as though trying to shake off the weight of his own words. My people made an oath long ago, and every time it's broken, we're bound to the curse. My transformation is a consequence of that curse. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she pieced together the fragments of his story. This wasn't just some random man on the side of the road. This was a creature, no, a being, caught between two worlds. Between humanity and something far darker. So what happens now? She asked quietly. Now, Liam said, his eyes locking onto hers with a strange intensity. You'll need to make a choice. Stay with me, help me break this curse, or walk away and let it consume us both. His words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning, with the weight of fate itself. Emily stared at him for a long moment, trying to read him. She wasn't sure what to make of him, his strange, tortured eyes, the way he spoke as if he were carrying the burden of an entire lifetime. But she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't just leave him to face whatever this curse was alone. Not now. Not after everything that had already happened. I'm not going anywhere, Emily said, her voice firm. I'll help you. We'll figure this out together. Liam's expression softened, but just for a moment. Then, the coldness returned, the faint flicker of the wolf beneath his human skin. You may regret that, he warned, his voice carrying an ominous tone. But you've already chosen. And once you choose, there's no turning back. The air between them felt thick, charged, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Emily wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew that for better or worse, she was in this now. And she wasn't about to leave him behind. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows of the old garage. Emily sat on a wooden stool, her hands resting on her knees as she watched Liam, still sitting on the floor, his body tense. The room felt too small, too suffocating for the storm that seemed to brew inside him. She could see the conflict in his eyes, the way he clenched his fists as if fighting to keep some part of himself under control. You said I had to choose, Emily said, breaking the silence. Her voice was steady, but she could feel her heart racing in her chest. What exactly am I choosing between? Liam's gaze flickered up to meet hers, his eyes flickering with a strange intensity. For a moment, it felt like he wasn't really seeing her, but rather staring through her, as though lost in the battle between man and beast. You're choosing whether to stay and help me break this curse, he said, his voice low and strained, or to walk away and leave me to face it alone. But there's no easy way out, Emily. You'll be marked by it. And once you're involved, there's no turning back. Emily took a deep breath, her fingers curling into fists as she processed his words. She had thought that helping him would be simple, that she could just bandage his wounds and move on with her life. But this was something far bigger, far darker than she had anticipated. I don't believe in running away, she said softly, her voice more certain than she felt. I've already made my choice. Liam studied her for a long time, his eyes searching hers for any sign of hesitation. When he found none, he nodded slowly, as if accepting something he hadn't fully wanted to admit. Then you need to understand what you're up against, he said quietly. What I am. Emily sat up straighter, her attention focused entirely on him. I'm listening. Liam's jaw clenched, and for a moment, he seemed to hesitate, as if considering whether to reveal more of himself. Then, with a deep breath, he spoke again, his voice low and tinged with something ancient. I'm not just a man, Emily. I'm part of something older, something that's been hunted and hidden for centuries. My people. He stopped himself, running a hand through his hair in frustration. We were cursed a long time ago, bound to a pact made by our ancestors. We were meant to be protectors, warriors for a cause that no longer exists. But the oath we swore to protect is what keeps us in chains. And the curse. He trailed off, shaking his head as if the words were too much to say. Emily's heart ached for him, but she couldn't let herself be swayed by sympathy alone. She needed to understand more. So, this curse, it's about your people? Your tribe? Liam met her gaze, his eyes dark and full of conflict. Yes. And no. It's about what we became after the pact was broken. We're not just bound by a promise anymore, Emily. We're trapped by a darkness that wants to consume everything. And that darkness, it lives inside me. Emily's chest tightened, a wave of unease washing over her. But she refused to let fear take control. How does my helping you break this curse change anything? I'm just me. What can I possibly do? Liam looked at her, and for the first time, there was a flicker of something. Softer in his eyes, something almost like hope. You're more than you think, Emily. Your touch, your choice to help me. It's the first thing that's broken the curse's grip. You didn't just save me from death. You've given me a chance to fight this. And now, he paused, taking a slow breath. Now, we need to find the key to ending it. The key to breaking the oath. Emily felt her pulse quicken as she listened to him. There was so much she didn't understand, so much that didn't make sense. But one thing was clear. She wasn't going to walk away. Not now. Not after everything that had already happened. Where do we start? She asked, her voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling in her mind. Liam stood up, his body moving with a predatory grace that sent a shiver through Emily's spine. He didn't answer immediately, but instead walked toward the window, his gaze drifting out into the darkness beyond. We start by finding the one who cursed me, he said, his voice hardening once more. And we make them pay. Emily's mind raced as she tried to grasp the weight of Liam's words. Find the one who cursed him? The thought of tracking down someone responsible for such a dark curse made her stomach twist. But she had already made her choice. She couldn't back out now, not after everything that had happened. Not after she had seen the struggle in Liam's eyes, heard the pain in his voice. He needed her, and that was all she needed to know. She stood up, her legs a little shaky, but her resolve solid. Where do we start? She asked, her voice firmer than she felt. Liam looked over his shoulder, his expression serious. We start with the old ruins outside the city. There's a place there where the veil between worlds is thin. It's where the curse was first cast. If anyone knows how to break it, it's there. Emily didn't hesitate. Then let's go. The night was still thick with fog as they made their way to Liam's motorcycle. He had insisted on driving, his body still not fully recovered, but he was insistent. The engine roared to life, and the sound cut through the silence like a knife. Emily climbed on behind him, gripping him tightly, her body pressed against his. The wind whipped at her face as they sped down the winding road, the lights of the city fading behind them. The further they went, the more the air seemed to change. The fog grew heavier, and the trees along the roadside seemed to grow taller, darker, as though they were closing in. Emily felt a chill crawl up her spine, but she didn't say anything. Liam was silent too, his jaw clenched as he focused on the road ahead. After what felt like hours, they arrived at the ruins. The place was nothing more than crumbling stone, half hidden by the overgrown forest that had long since claimed it. It was eerie, silent, with an unsettling stillness in the air. The faintest trace of old magic lingered, and Emily could almost feel it, like a pulse under the earth. This is where it all started, Liam said quietly, his voice carrying a weight she could hear. The place where my people made the pact. The place where I lost everything. Emily glanced at him, seeing the haunted look in his eyes. And the curse? She asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. The curse is bound to this place, he replied, his voice low, as though he were speaking to himself more than to her. The magic that holds me, that keeps me from being fully human, it lives here, in the very stones. If we are to break it, we need to undo what was done. Emily swallowed, trying to steady the unease that had settled in her chest. How do we do that? She asked. Liam turned to her, his gaze softening. but there was still a shadow of something darker lurking behind his eyes. "We need to find the altar," he said. "It's where the curse was cast. Only by destroying it can we break the bond." Emily nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. The ruins seemed to stretch on forever, the shadows playing tricks with her eyes, making her feel as though she were walking through a forgotten dream. The deeper they went into the ruins, the heavier the air became. The walls seemed to close in, and every step felt as though they were walking on hallowed ground. "It's here," Liam said suddenly, his voice breaking the silence. He stopped in front of a large stone slab, half buried in the earth, covered in moss and ivy. Emily could feel the magic. Now, a dark, oppressive presence that seemed to radiate from the stone. "This is it," Liam whispered. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She didn't know what to expect, but this place was alive with a power that sent shivers down her spine. "How do we destroy it?" she asked. Liam's eyes flickered to her, then back to the altar. "We don't destroy it," he said quietly. "We unmake it." He knelt down in front of the stone, his fingers brushing against the moss-covered surface. "I have to let go of the curse, Emily. I have to give up the power that binds me. And in doing so, I'll lose everything. But it's the only way." Emily's heart ached for him. She could see the sacrifice in his eyes, the weight of the choice he was about to make. "I'm with you," she said softly, stepping closer. "I'll help you." Liam looked up at her, his eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and something darker, more conflicted. "Once we do this," he said, his voice heavy, "there's no going back. You'll be a part of this, forever." Emily nodded, the truth of his words settling into her bones. But she didn't flinch. She was here, and she wasn't going to walk away now. Together, they would face whatever came next. And together, they would break the curse. Ian stood over the ancient stone slab, his fingers resting lightly on the moss-covered surface. The air around them was thick with the power that emanated from the altar, a dark, pulsating energy that seemed to vibrate through Emily's chest. The weight of the curse, the weight of his fate, was all around them, pressing down like the very earth itself was alive with it. Emily could feel her heartbeat in her ears, the tension in the air making it hard to breathe, but she refused to look away. "Are you sure about this?" she asked softly, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. Ian glanced up at her, his eyes filled with something almost like regret, but deeper, darker. "I have to do this, Emily," he said, his voice low and rough. "I've been bound to this curse for so long, and it's taken everything from me. But the worst part is knowing I'll never truly be free. Not until I let go." He paused, his gaze drifting. "Back to the stone. But I won't be the same afterward. I won't be me anymore." Emily felt a lump form in her throat, her chest tightening with the weight of his words. She had known this was coming, that this moment would come where he would have to make the ultimate sacrifice, but hearing him say it made her heart ache in ways she didn't expect. She took a step closer, her hands trembling as she reached out to touch his arm. "You'll still be you, Ian," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "You have to be. This curse may have changed you, but it doesn't define you. Who you are inside, that's what matters." Ian turned his head, his expression softening just a little, but the shadows of the past still lingered in his eyes. "I hope you're right," he murmured. "I really do." With a deep breath, he lowered his hand to the stone, pressing it flat against the surface. The moment his skin made contact with the ancient altar, the ground beneath their feet seemed to shudder, a low rumble that echoed through the ruins. Emily instinctively stepped back, her heart racing as the air around them seemed to grow colder, the darkness growing thicker. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ian's hand was still on the stone, his fingers clenching as if he were trying to draw power from it. "It's starting," he said, his voice strained. "The bond is weakening, but it's not going to be easy. The curse won't let go without a fight." Emily swallowed hard, watching as the energy around them began to swirl, dark tendrils of magic that danced in the air like smoke, curling around Ian's body. She could see the strain on his face, the way his muscles tensed, the way his whole body seemed to tremble under the weight of the magic. "Don't fight it, Ian," she said urgently, her voice full of concern. "You can't force it to break. You have to let it go." He let out a strangled breath, his eyes flashing with a mixture of frustration and determination. "I know," he said, his voice barely audible. "But it's hard. It's all I've ever known. The swirling magic around him intensified, and Emily could feel it too now. The pull of something ancient and powerful, something that seemed to reach deep into her soul. She knew this wasn't just about Ian anymore. This was about both of them. The bond was unraveling, but it wasn't just his curse that was being broken. It was a part of her, too. She reached out, her hand brushing against his, and for a brief moment, their fingers intertwined. The connection between them flared to life, a spark of warmth in the midst of the cold. Ian's eyes met hers, and in that moment, she saw something she hadn't expected: hope. Real hope, like the flicker of a flame in the darkest night. "Emily," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm scared." She squeezed his hand, her heart swelling with emotion. "I'm here," she said softly. "We're in this together. Whatever happens next, we'll face it together." The magic around them pulsed once, twice, and then there was a sudden, deafening silence. The energy that had been swirling in the air dissipated, leaving only the sound of their breathing in the stillness. Emily looked at Ian, her heart in her throat. His face was pale, his eyes wide with disbelief. The curse had broken, but it had come at a cost. The transformation was starting, the change in him was already beginning, but Emily didn't know if it was for better or worse. All she knew was that she was here, with him, and she would face whatever came next. Together. The silence between them was deafening, and Emily could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She stood there, her heart racing, as she watched Ian struggle to come to terms with the change that was sweeping through him. The transformation wasn't immediate, but she could see the subtle shifts. His breathing was deeper, his muscles flexing with an almost unnatural power beneath his skin. His eyes, once a deep brown, now flickered with hints of gold, like the embers of a fire waiting to burst into flames. Emily stepped closer, hesitant but determined. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice soft, barely more than a whisper. Ian didn't respond at first. He was staring down at his hands, his fingers twitching as if testing the limits of his body. "I'm not sure," he muttered, his voice low and gravelly. "It's like I'm waking up after being asleep for a long time." He flexed his hand, and Emily could see his nails, now a shade of silver, almost translucent, glinting in the moonlight. "This is only the beginning," he continued, more to himself than to her. "The curse is gone, but the transformation—" He stopped, his gaze flickering to Emily's face. "It's going to change me in ways I can't control." Emily could feel the tension in the air, the heavy silence broken only by the sound of their breathing. She reached out slowly, her hand trembling as it hovered near his. "You're still you, Ian," she said softly, her voice full of conviction. "You're not the curse. You're not what it made you. You're still the man I've come to trust." Ian's eyes met hers, and for a moment, there was something vulnerable in his gaze. It was as if he were afraid to believe in what she was saying, afraid to hope that he could still be the person he had been. "I want to believe that," he said quietly, his voice filled with emotion. "But I can feel it, the wolf inside me. It's different now. It's stronger. I don't know what it will do, or what I'll do." Emily took a deep breath, trying to steady her own nerves. She couldn't let fear take over, not now. "We'll figure it out," she said, more to reassure herself than him. "You're not alone, Ian. I'm here. We'll face this together." He looked at her, his eyes softening, a flicker of something deeper in them, something that made her heart ache with a mixture of sympathy and something else, something unspoken between them. For a moment, there was only silence as they stood there, the tension between them palpable. Then Ian took a deep breath, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "I don't deserve this," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "After everything I've done, after everything I've become, you still want to stand by me?" Emily shook her head, stepping closer until she was standing right in front of him. "You didn't choose this," she said firmly. "You didn't choose the curse. And you're not the monster you think you are. You're a man. A good man." Ian's eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of hope in them, a hope he had long buried. "I don't know what the future holds," he said quietly, his hand reaching up to gently touch her face. "But I know I don't want to face it alone." Emily smiled softly, a warmth spreading through her chest as she took his hand, threading her fingers through his. "You won't have to," she said, her voice filled with quiet determination. They stood there for a long moment, the night around them still and heavy with unspoken promises. Emily knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more challenges, more darkness to face. But she also knew that they could face it together. The curse was gone, but the journey was far from over. And she was ready to walk that path with Ian, no matter where it led. As the moonlight bathed them in its soft glow, Emily and Ian shared a quiet moment of understanding, knowing that the next chapter of their lives was about to begin, together. The air around them was thick with the quiet hum of the night, the only sounds coming from the distant rustling of leaves and the faint whisper of the wind through the trees. Emily stood beside Ian, her hands still intertwined with his, feeling the steady beat of his pulse against her skin. The silence was comforting, yet the weight of everything they had just been through still hung in the air, unspoken but palpable. "Do you think it's over?" Emily asked softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. She wasn't sure if she was asking about the curse, or about them, or about the future. Maybe it was all of it. Ian let out a slow breath, his gaze drifting out toward the dark woods that surrounded the ruins. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice strained but honest. "The curse is broken, but there's still something." He turned to face her, his eyes searching hers as if trying to read her thoughts. "The wolf inside me, it's still there, Emily. The magic is gone, but the change, it's not just going to fade away." Emily nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle in her chest. She knew this wasn't going to be a simple fix, a one-time ritual that could erase everything. Ian had changed, in ways she didn't fully understand, and even though the curse had been broken, the aftermath was something they both had to face. "I know," she said softly, "but that doesn't mean you're alone in this. We'll figure it out. You don't have to face this, whatever it is, by yourself." Ian's lips twitched in the faintest of smiles, but it was brief, a shadow of the person he used to be. "I'm not used to having someone around," he said quietly. "It's always been just me for so long. I don't know how to." His voice trailed off, the words hanging between them like a silent plea for understanding. Emily stepped closer, gently squeezing his hand. "You're not alone anymore," she said firmly. "And I'll be here, no matter what. We'll face whatever comes next together." He met her gaze, his eyes softening for a moment, the intensity of the wolf within him momentarily receding. "I don't know what the future holds, but I don't want to do it without you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily's heart swelled with a mix of relief and something deeper, something she hadn't expected to feel. A sense of connection that went beyond just helping him break a curse, beyond the pain and the sacrifice. It was more than just a promise to face challenges together. It was the quiet understanding that they had become something more. She didn't have all the answers, but she knew that this, whatever it was worth holding on to. "Then we'll take it one step at a time," she said, her voice steady. "And we'll make it through. Together." They stood in silence for a long moment, the weight of their shared decision settling in. The path ahead wasn't clear, and the future felt uncertain, but in that moment, it didn't matter. They had each other, and that was enough. The night around them felt less heavy now, the shadows of the past receding just a little, as if the darkness itself had been waiting for them to make this choice. Emily could feel the change in the air, the magic that had once bound Ian now gone, leaving a space for something new to grow. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be quick, but as long as they had each other, Emily was willing to face whatever came next. The stars above them seemed to shine a little brighter, as if offering their own silent promise of hope. Together, they would find a way to move forward, to build something new from the ashes of the past. And with that thought, Emily felt a spark of hope begin to light. The way forward, even in the face of uncertainty. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty, but also with a sense of purpose that Emily hadn't felt in a long time. The world around them seemed to shift, the air lighter, as if the curse had truly been broken, but she knew better than to believe that it was that simple. Ian's transformation was gradual, subtle, like the change of seasons, something she could feel in the very air around them, but hard to pin down. She had seen the way his eyes flickered with gold whenever the moon rose, how the strength in his body had grown, and the subtle shifts in his behavior. The wolf inside him was still there, though he tried to control it. He was fighting it, but Emily knew it wasn't something that could be easily dismissed. The darkness within him was like a shadow that clung to him, always there, a part of him now. It was both a burden and a power, and Ian was still trying to figure out how to reconcile the two. The first time he'd left the house after the curse had been broken, Emily had felt a sense of unease. He had assured her that he was fine, but there was a new sharpness to him, something more dangerous, yet somehow still human. He had taken to walking in the woods near the ruins, his body stretching as though it had become too big for itself, the wolf struggling against the man. Emily watched him from the window one evening, her heart heavy with concern. She had never been more sure of her feelings for him, but the fear was still there. Fear of the unknown, fear of what he might become, and fear of losing him to something neither of them could control. "Are you sure you're okay?" she asked one evening, after he had returned, his clothes disheveled, his eyes distant. "I'm fine," he said, his voice steady, but there was a tightness to his words that made Emily's stomach twist. Just needed some time to think. But she knew it wasn't just thinking. She had seen the way the moonlight had reflected off his skin, how it seemed to shimmer with a strange energy, how his steps had been more like a wolf's than a man's. "Ian," she said softly, reaching out to him, "you're not alone in this. I'm here. You don't have to keep hiding it from me." He turned to face her, his gaze conflicted. There was something raw in his eyes, as if he were struggling with a battle that had nothing to do with the curse itself, but with who he was becoming. "I don't want to drag you into this," he said, his voice low. "I don't want you to be part of what I've become." Emily stepped closer, her heart pounding. "You're still you, Ian, and I'm not going anywhere." There was a long silence between them, a tension that neither of them could deny. Emily knew he needed her, but more than that, she needed him. Not as the man with a curse, not as the wolf inside him, but as Ian, the person who had shown her kindness and strength when she least expected it. Ian closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them again, there was something different in them. The battle within him wasn't over, but the walls he had built around himself seemed to soften just a little. "I'm scared," he admitted quietly. "Scared of what I might do, what might happen to us." Emily took his hand in hers, squeezing it gently. "I'm scared too," she said, her voice filled with warmth and reassurance. "But we'll face it together, no matter what comes next." Ian smiled faintly, his expression a mix of gratitude and sadness. "You really mean that, don't you?" he asked. "I do," she said softly. They stood there for a moment, their hands intertwined, the world around them quiet, as if waiting for them to make their next move. Emily didn't have all the answers, and neither did Ian, but together, they would find a way forward. The future was still uncertain, still filled with challenges they couldn't even begin to imagine. But as long as they had each other, Emily knew that they could face whatever came their way. Whatever darkness still lingered in Ian, whatever struggles lay ahead, they would face them together, one step at a time. The days turned into weeks, and with each passing one, Emily and Ian settled into a rhythm, learning to navigate the unpredictable path that lay before them. Ian's transformation didn't stop. It wasn't as dramatic as Emily had feared, but it was undeniable. At night, when the moon was full, he would disappear into the woods, unable to resist the pull of the wolf within him. Emily knew that he fought it with every ounce of strength, but sometimes she would catch the flash of gold in his eyes, the way the muscles in his body would tense, and she couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and fear. Yet, despite it all, there was something comforting about their quiet time together. They spoke little of the changes. Instead, they focused on what they could control. Emily would wait for him by the fire when he returned, the glow from the flames illuminating his tired face, his expression softening the moment he saw her. "I'm sorry," Ian would say each time, his voice filled with regret. "I didn't mean to leave you alone." And every time, Emily would shake her head, her smile gentle. "You're not alone, Ian. You're never alone." He would sit beside her, and for a while, they would simply be, their hands entwined as the crackling fire filled the silence between them. It wasn't perfect. There were moments when the darkness inside Ian seemed almost too much to bear, when his internal battle was visible in the tension of his shoulders, in the way his jaw clenched, as though fighting an enemy only he could see. And in those moments, Emily's resolve would strengthen. She knew that he wasn't just fighting the wolf inside him. He was fighting for himself, for the man he still was, for the person he wanted to be. "Do you ever feel like you're losing yourself?" Ian asked one evening, his voice quieter than usual. They were sitting on the porch, the cool breeze of the night brushing against their skin. Emily could hear the soft hum of crickets in the distance, the world outside their little house alive with the sounds of nature. She looked over at him, seeing the uncertainty in his eyes, the flickering trace of the wolf that still lingered there. Sometimes, she admitted, her voice gentle. But I think the hardest part is learning to accept who we are, even with all the parts that scare us. Ian's gaze met hers, and for a moment, there was something raw in the look he gave her, something that told her he understood. I don't know if I'll ever fully control it, he said, his words filled with a quiet honesty. But I want to try. For you, for us. Emily's heart swelled with warmth, the weight of his words sinking deep into her chest. She reached out, her hand resting lightly on his. We'll figure it out together, she said softly, the words more of a promise than a statement. Ian didn't say anything at first, but she could see the way his shoulders relaxed, the way the tension in his face eased, as though the simple act of saying it out loud had lifted a weight he hadn't even realized he was carrying. Thank you, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Emily smiled, leaning in slightly. You don't have to thank me, she said. I'm here, and I always will be. The fire burned low, and the stars above them shimmered in the vast expanse of the night sky, their silent witness to the unspoken bond between them. There were still many unknowns, many challenges ahead. But in that moment, with Ian beside her, Emily knew one thing for sure. They had each other. And that was enough to face whatever darkness still lingered in their lives, whatever transformations still awaited. Together, they would find their way, one step at a time.